So I wanted to talk a little bit today. I know we've only got 20 minutes, but I wanted to cover some of the things that our implementation did that's not necessarily technical related. I appreciate everyone coming up and giving their technical examples, and I'm more than happy to do that if anyone's got any questions on what they'd like to see of what we've done. But I did have a lot of questions just in talking with people over the last couple of days about how we did training and how we've done sustainment and things like that. And I know I touched a bit on the change management side yesterday during my presentation as well. So I wanted to just go through a couple of the sort of high level, give you an idea of what we did for training. So I kind of harvested, I rejigged what I was going to talk about today and pulled together some information. Hopefully it's not too scattered, but this is the DOT training model. This was harvested from one of the 7,922 slide decks that we've seen through the life of the project. But it is a good illustration of just kind of how we set it up. So this 70, 20, 10 approach, right? Which is sort of 70% of training on the job. Now, that doesn't sound ideal, but let's face it, we're all human, and that's the way that a lot of us learn, right? Is hands-on doing that work. So just keep that in mind. There's no substitute for that sort of on-the-job training. 20% roughly is peer training. So that is things like buddy training, coaching, supervisor feedback, whatever you call it in your organization, having that sort of mentoree relationship where, you know, the person who's maybe struggling or needs to be coached through it is able to get that support that they need. In there, you've got the web-based research and networking. So that sort of falls into our, LMS system. It sort of drops into this next group down as well, where the users can go and reference all that training material. That bottom part is that 10%, which is that formal training. So some examples in the section on the right, things like resource centers, videos, quick reference guides, job aids. So our training team, which I was not part of, but I got to witness the magic that they did, and they did an amazing job at putting this together. They've done all of that, and the backtracking, going back through, as we on the config side were making some last minute semi-agile changes. Obviously that had to be reflected in training content that had already been developed, right? So communication, feeding that back in, but it turned out really well for us. And they did just an amazing job. But those quick reference guides, something that a designer can have at their desk. I know we try to get away from paper and paperless society and all this kind of thing, but sometimes just having that little laminated card with some of the key codes or key commands or something like that is enough support to give an end user that comfort level they need to just kind of move forward with it, right? So keep those sorts of things in mind. And then this is a sustainment organization structure. So I did touch on it quickly yesterday. My role in the project, came from the business. I was a frontline manager before the project started, and I worked my way through the project itself, dove headfirst into the AUD implementation, and sort of led the charge as far as that's concerned. And I really found that I enjoyed doing that, and I really wanted to stay with that. So part of my conversation was in that sustainment organization. What do we do once the project winds down? How are we going to sustain this? And how do we structure it? So I wanted to see if I could find a place for myself in there, and that's what I have done. And so my role now, I'm a senior IT analyst, and I support the AUD config side. There are others that support the EAM, as I mentioned, and the UDH side. But for me personally, I'm on the UDH or the AUD config side. So that's just a quick breakdown of the way that the support is structured, right down from the top and that governance level through the problems and requests, incidents. It gives you an idea of sort of how they flow. So from an incident coming in, that's an end user that has a problem. Could be my computer won't turn on. Could be I'm trying to draw a three-phase pole line with a heavy corner, and AUD is trying to make it a buck corner. It should be, a suspension insulator. Could be any of those, right? So it's an incident. And from the end user's perspective, they don't know who to send that to, but our first line of defense is the power user network, right? They came through the project. They are subject matter experts, or they should be. We've counted on them to be. and they have that knowledge to at least guide the incident in the right direction. So, is it a hardware issue? Is the computer not working? Did you crack the screen? Did you forget to plug it in? That's going to go to a separate group. That's more our ISD group, and they're going to handle that sort of thing. Autodesk licensing issues, those sorts of things, they're going to be more ISD side. The actual business usability of it, things like my pole head isn't connecting correctly, or I don't think AUD is generating this properly, or I've got a problem with my costing. I expected to put the cost in, and my estimate was 5,000, and it's coming out 5 million. That's a problem. So, okay, we'll look at it, right? But those incidents come through the power users. They get filtered. They'll take a stab at trying to correct it. Maybe it's just general knowledge. And then on to this DX sustainment team, distribution sustainment. That's the team that I'm part of, and they work their way through. And then in the application support team. So you can see we've got a number of groups, a number of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. And this kind of ties back to what I said yesterday around communication, making sure that you've got effective lines of communication. You've got a good process and a good system established for keeping all of your teams, not just during the project, that's huge and crucial, but making sure that in the sustainment world, you're still keeping in communication. And that's everywhere from your ISD team, who needs to build a new server for your new VDI, has to be in communication with the people that are maintaining your AUD system. Same as needs to be talking to the people that are maintaining your EAM system, right? So communication is key. And then in on that, we still loop in the training support team, because as we come across problems, as we come across incidents, we'll find defects, we'll find things that we didn't get the first time around, and we'll fix them. And then we need to feed that back into the training support team, because they need to update their training content. They need to keep that content fresh, relevant. We're always bringing new designers on board. We're always looking for the opportunity to do sweep behind training to make sure that our designers are at the top of their game and that they have the most current and most relevant information in front of them. And it's on us to make sure that that information gets to the right team in regards to the training side, right? The application support, I won't go into this. This is a big one. New and impacted components. So, I said yesterday we've got a lot of systems impacted, just to give you an idea of the list. So a lot of discussion around who is going to be handling them. You can see our business solution side is we call it our WAM-GIS. They're responsible for things like ArcGIS. That's our back end, GIS design or GIS system. AutoCAD map, and we got right down to that granular level of detail, right? Map 2021, the one that we're using, that group is responsible for incidents, for licensing, for just taking care of that. They handle UDHGIS and EAM, our design container, and so on. Over in the integrated operational support, that's AUD configuration, and that's where I land. We also do that costing and contracting. So give you an idea of kind of, the setup of it, but also to the scope and how far we had to reach and how many different groups that we deal with. I know not every organization has that many layers of support or need for that. And I envy you in some ways because it's simpler and you're able to, make it a finer dialed in process. But that's where we landed, and so far it's working well. The sustainment support layer. So this is, just another idea or a kind of a visual on how that incident process works. Starting at self-directed help aid and videos, we really try to push the users to help themselves. We'll help you help yourself. We try that. It doesn't always work. What we've seen is that, there's a lot of cases where people just do get frustrated and they throw their hands up right away, pick up the phone, call the help desk, something's just not right. But we encourage them, we give them the tools that they need to try to support that sort of self-started learning process, because I think it's genuinely beneficial for any of us to be able to determine the solution ourselves, right? And then we feel that satisfaction before we move on. That holds true for the end users too, right? So end users, if you give them the tools they need to do that, in a lot of cases, they're gonna go down that road. Up to the power users, the supervisor, the next level is, data process issues. That's where my group gets involved. Other technical issues, that's our help one, that's our external IT support line, and then ultimately up to those ISD groups for resolution. And just a quick little blurb on the incident management model. This is sort of where we landed, but essentially a breakdown. And this is sent out in communication because in the midst of it, it's like the fog of war, you know, when you've got 300, 400,000 users, and they'll forget, they'll need reminding, and that's part of that communication, right? So for us, we have in the field, they have monthly safety meetings where they all come into the office and they run through a package. We get these types of communications into the safety meeting, right? Things like what's changing in the software. So as I said yesterday, we've done over 50 fixes and updates specific to rules, models, 3D blocks, things like that since go live. Part of that for us is putting out a communication package, so we keep those end users up to date on what's changed, what's new, what they're looking at, and all part of that process to try and help them sort of help themselves. And then another quick one on sustainment streams and incidents. I won't bore you with the details. So that's basically it. I wanted to give you sort of a really kind of quick high-level overview on the sustainment. And, you know, not to say that yours will look the same, not to say that you'll have the same type of groups, but the concept is the same, right? In terms of making sure that you're supporting the end user, making sure you've got a clear and consistent approach on how you're going to handle the incidents, the number of incidents that are coming in, the types of them. How do you triage those? How do you assign them to the right groups? How do you make sure that they're not getting lost in the mix? It's, you know, it's a tough call. And so I wouldn't be able to tell you how to do it. Your organization is going to be different, but it's a great thing to think of and just to make sure that you cover off.